In the shadow of the towering Himalayan mountains, a fragile figure emerges from the dense underbrush. A tigress, limping and desperate, drags her broken leg through the dusty path of a remote village. Her once majestic coat, now dulled and matted, tells the story of suffering and survival. Wide-eyed villagers freeze in fear, their hearts pounding as they witness the untamed beauty standing before them, begging for help. The villagers, initially paralyzed by fear, begin to rally around the tigress. They gather food, water, and makeshift supplies, motivated by an instinct to protect rather than harm. As the sun dips toward the horizon, casting a golden glow over the scene, Priya gently approaches the wounded animal. Her heart races, knowing that each second counts. What happens next will test the limits of bravery, compassion, and the bond between humans and the wild. The fate of the tigress and the village hangs in the balance. The tigress, sensing the gentleness in Priya's tone, let out a soft whimper. It was a sound that echoed the pain etched into her eyes. "Stay calm, girl," Priya murmured, gently stroking the animal's head. The villagers watched, their expressions shifting from trepidation to awe as they witnessed this fragile interaction. "I don't know," Priya replied honestly, glancing at the villagers. "But we have to try. She needs us more than ever." As night fell, the villagers worked tirelessly. Women brought out bowls of milk and meat scraps, creating a makeshift sanctuary around the tigress. But not everyone was at ease. From the edge of the village, a group of children whispered among themselves, their eyes darting towards the woods. "It's hurt. It won't hurt us," insisted another, crossing her arms defiantly. "Or maybe it's protecting something," an elder interjected, his brows knitted together. "What if it's guarding its territory? Or worse, its cubs?" Suddenly, the sound of rustling leaves pierced the night. The villagers froze, their hearts racing. A silhouette emerged, a figure creeping toward them with stealthy intent. Priya's heart sank as she recognized the dark forms approaching the illegal hunters, emboldened by the night. "Look at that one," one hunter sneered, pointing at the tigress. "She's a goner. Let's take her down now." With a scoff, the hunters laughed, their eyes glinting with greed. "You think you can save her? She's just a beast as a trophy." Priya felt a swell of hope and fear intertwined. "We must protect her," she urged, her voice steady. "If we stand together, they can't take her." The hunters, momentarily taken aback, exchanged glances. "What do these fools think they can do?" one of them sneered. As the confrontation intensified, the villagers formed a barrier between the tigress and the hunters, their resolve strengthening with each moment. Priya knelt beside the injured animal, whispering words of comfort as the tension crackled like electricity in the air. The hunters, sensing the unity and strength of the villagers, hesitated. "You're outnumbered. You think you can take us on?" Just then, a low growl rumbled from the tigress, a sound that reverberated through the stillness. It was a warning, a testament to her will to survive even in her weakened state. "Off that," Priya commanded, her voice unwavering. "You don't belong here. This is our land, and she is part of it." As silence enveloped the village, Priya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle around her. She turned to the villagers, tears brimming in her eyes. "You did it. We did it. We protected her." If this story is touching your heart, make sure to comment from where you are hearing this amazing story. Priya called out, her voice filled with emotion. As the villagers celebrated their victory over the hunters, a sense of relief washed over them. The tigress, exhausted but safe, nestled closer to Priya, who continued to whisper soothing words. However, just as the atmosphere began to shift towards hope, an unexpected figure emerged from the shadows, an elderly woman named Mira, known for her deep connection with the forest and its creatures. Confusion rippled through the villagers as they turned to Mira. "We protected her," Priya replied, her brow furrowed. "We couldn't let the hunters harm her." The villagers exchanged worried glances, their earlier triumph fading into uncertainty. "What do you mean?" Anil asked, stepping forward, his youthful confidence wavering. Priya's heart sank as the weight of Mira's words settled upon her. She had acted with compassion, but now she faced the harsh reality of her choices. If we can help her recover, she can return to her cubs, Priya pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. A murmur of fear swept through the villagers. The realization that their bravery might have set off a chain reaction of danger loomed large. "What should we do?" Rurge, the elder, asked, his voice trembling with uncertainty. The villagers were silent, grappling with the implications of Mira's revelation. The notion that they could be guardians of the forest, not just protectors of the injured, began to take root in their minds. Mira nodded, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes. "That's a start, but it requires unity. You must come together as a community, not just for this tigress, but for the land itself. You need to learn to coexist with the wild, to understand its rhythms and its dangers." The villagers rallied around Priya and Mira, their fear transforming into resolve. They discussed building shelters, setting up watch points, and establishing communication with nearby villages to keep each other informed of the poachers' movements. But with every passing day, the fear of the poacher loomed larger. Whispers of his presence echoed through the village, tales of his ruthlessness and greed spreading like wildfire. The villagers knew that to protect the tigress and her cubs, they must confront their own hidden prejudices, the belief that they were powerless against the forces that threatened their home. The villagers nodded, their faces set with determination. Anno, the boy who had once clutched his mother in fear, stood up. "We can't let him hurt the tigress or her cubs. We're stronger together." With that, the villagers devised a plan. They would not only protect the tigress, but also set traps to deter the poacher, using their knowledge of the land to their advantage. They would patrol the forests at night, forming a united front against the darkness that threatened their sanctuary. The night was quiet, but tensions simmered just beneath the surface. Each villager knew that the battle for the tigress and her cubs was far from over, but united. They felt a strength they had never known before, a fierce determination to stand against the encroaching darkness, not just for the tigress, but for the very soul of their lane. As the days turned into weeks, the village transformed. The once quiet streets buzzed with newfound purpose, each villager united in their mission to protect the tigress and her cubs. Priya led the charge, her hands stained with the earth of the forest as she dug trenches and built shelters, while Mira shared her wisdom about the delicate balance of nature. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, Priya gathered the villagers in the square. "We must be vigilant," she urged, her voice steady but heavy with concern. "The poacher will come. We need to be ready." That night, Priya couldn't sleep. She stared at the stars, her mind racing with thoughts of the tigress and her cubs. What if they were in danger? What if the poacher had already found them? She decided to venture into the forest, driven by a sense of urgency she couldn't shake. Moving quietly, Priya followed a narrow path that led deeper into the forest. Her heart raced with every step, a mix of fear and resolve propelling her forward. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees, sending chills down her spine. She froze, recognizing the sound that was the tigress. But the sight was marred by a dark figure lurking at the edge of the clearing. The poacher had found them. He stood, rifle in hand, a cruel smirk plastered on his face as he surveyed the scene. Priya's heart raced as she realized the danger the tigress and her cubs were in. The poacher turned, startled but quickly recovering. Well, if it isn't the little vet playing hero, you think you can save them. This is a wild animal. She is nothing but a trophy to me. He raised his rifle, aiming it at the tigress. Out of the way, Phil, he barked, his voice dripping with malice. The poacher laughed, a low, menacing sound. You think you can intimidate me with a scared cat, or out of your league? The poacher's eyes narrowed, and Priya could see the conflict brewing within him. He was a man driven by greed, but the sight of the tigress standing tall and proud, her cubs behind her, seemed to shake his resolve. The poacher's smirk faded, replaced by a flash of panic. They were all fools. You think you can take me on? The tension escalated, the air thick with fear and determination. The poacher hesitated, glancing back at the tigress and her cubs. In that moment of uncertainty, Priya seized the opportunity. You can walk away now, or you can face us. But if you harm her, you'll have to answer to all of us. Before he could pull the trigger, the tigress lunged forward, her growl echoing through the trees. The villagers, emboldened by her spirit, surged forward as well, ready to defend their home. The confrontation erupted into chaos. The poacher stumbled back, caught off guard by the unexpected unity of the villagers. Priya felt a rush of adrenaline as she moved, her heart pounding. The tigress circled protectively around her cubs, her eyes fierce and unwavering. The villagers stood their ground, breathing heavily, their hearts racing. Is he done? Anil asked, glancing around nervously. But as they began to celebrate their victory, a chilling realization settled over them. The poacher may have retreated for now, but he would return, and they needed to be prepared. The stakes had risen, and the battle for the tigress and her cubs was far from over. As the night deepened, Priya looked toward the forest, her heart filled with a mix of fear and hope. The path ahead was uncertain, but she knew one thing for sure: they would fight for the tigress, for her cubs, and for the very soul of their land. Together, they would stand against the darkness, unyielding and brave. We have proven we can stand together, she began, looking around at the determined faces, illuminated by the flickering light of lanterns. But we need a plan, one that keeps the tigress and her cubs safe from that poacher and others like him. The villagers murmured in agreement, but Mirror, the wise elder, raised a hand to silence them. Patrolling is important, but we must also understand the poacher's motivations. We cannot assume he is the only threat. There are deeper issues at play here. Mirror's weathered face grew serious. The poacher is a symptom of a larger problem. People in the nearby towns are struggling. They see wildlife as a resource, something to exploit for survival. We must also confront the poverty that drives people to such desperate acts. Exactly, Mirror nodded. But this requires us to confront our own prejudices. We must see the poacher not just as an enemy, but as a person shaped by circumstances. This will be our greatest challenge. By reaching out, Mirror suggested, we can invite people from the nearby towns to discuss their needs and find ways to work together. We must show them that there are alternatives to poaching. Anil broke the silence. But what if they come for the tigress? What if they don't care? A murmur of agreement spread through the group, but lingering doubt hung in the air like a storm cloud. This won't be easy, Raj, one of the elders cautioned. We must tread carefully. Old grudges run deep. On the day of the gathering, villagers and townsfolk began to arrive. Initially, the atmosphere was tense, with wary glances exchanged between the two groups. Priya stood at the front, heart racing as she prepared to speak. As she spoke, she noted the skeptical expressions among some townsfolk. We know there are challenges, she continued, but we believe that by working together, we can create sustainable solutions that benefit both people and wildlife. The tension in the air thickened. Priya felt a wave of frustration wash over her. I understand your anger, she replied, her voice calm but firm. But together, we have the power to change things. If we can create a sanctuary, we can also promote ecotourism, which could provide jobs and income without harming the wildlife. Priyar's heart sank. The reality of their plight was hitting home. "I know it's not easy," she said, trying to connect with him. "But continuing to poach will only lead to more loss of wildlife, loss of community. If we protect this land, it can provide for us in ways we haven't imagined." The villagers shifted uneasily, grappling with the raw truth of his words. Priyar felt her own privilege weighing heavily upon her. "You're right," she admitted. "I can't fully understand your struggles, but I want to listen. I want to find solutions that work for both of us." Priyar felt the weight of their desperation. What if we created a cooperative, a way for villagers and townspeople to share resources, farming techniques, skills for crafts or trades that can provide income without harming the wildlife? "We stand together," Anil chimed in, stepping up beside Priyar. "If we unite, we can protect the land and each other. We'll create a watch system, keep an eye on the forest, and support one another. We won't let fear drive us apart." As the sun began to set, the villagers and townspeople started to discuss ideas, their voices mingling in the air, a symphony of hope and possibility. Priyar felt a swell of optimism, realizing that this was a turning point. As the gathering concluded, Priyar looked toward the forest, where the tigress and her cubs had been hidden from sight. She felt an unbreakable bond forming between the villagers and the wild, a connection that transcended fear and misunderstanding. They were ready to embrace the complexities of their intertwined fates, united in their love for the land and its creatures. As the days passed following the gathering, a palpable change swept through the village. Priyar and the villagers worked tirelessly, not only to protect the tigress and her cubs, but also to foster connections with the townsfolk. The spirit of cooperation began to blossom, and hope filled the air like the scent of wildflowers in spring. One crisp morning, Priyar and Nira walked through the forest, scouting potential sites for the sanctuary. They paused near a bubbling stream, the sun casting a golden hue over the water. "This is perfect," Priyar said, her heart swelling with excitement. "We can create a safe haven right here." As weeks turned into months, the sanctuary took shape. The villagers built shelters and planted trees, creating a lush environment where the tigress could thrive with her cubs. But the specter of the poacher loomed, a constant reminder of the threats that still existed. Fear rippled through the crowd, but Priyar stepped forward, her resolve unwavering. "We've come too far to back down now. We must protect our sanctuary and the tigress. Together, we can outsmart him." Suddenly, a rustle in the trees broke the stillness of the night. Priya's heart raced as she signaled to the villagers, who quickly took their positions. The shadows shifted, and the poacher emerged, his eyes glinting with malice. "Leave now," Priya shouted, her voice echoing through the darkness. "You won't harm her or her cubs." But Priya felt the strength of her community behind her. "We are not afraid. We stand together." Anil stepped forward, his young face determined. "We're not just protecting a tigress. We're protecting our home." Off. Priya shouted, her heart racing as she stepped between the poacher and the tigress. "You're outnumbered, and you're not welcome here." The villagers erupted in cheers, their voices ringing out in triumph. Priya felt tears of relief stream down her cheeks as she turned to the tigress, whose gaze held a deep understanding. The bond between them had grown stronger, and together they had faced the darkness. Priya stood at the forefront of this movement, her heart swelling with pride as she watched the community flourish. The sanctuary became a symbol of resilience and hope, a safe haven for the tigress and her cubs, and a testament to the power of unity. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Priya gathered the villagers by the sanctuary. "We've done something incredible together," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "We've shown that compassion can conquer fear, and that we are stronger when we stand united." As the stars twinkled above, Priya looked toward the forest, feeling the presence of the tigress and her cubs. The journey had only just begun, but one thing was clear: they would continue to fight for the wild, for each other, and for a future where harmony thrived. In the end, Priya knew that the true victory lay not only in the survival of the tigress, but in the transformation of the village, a community forever changed by the power of compassion, courage, and the unbreakable bond between humanity and nature. Together, they had forged a path toward a brighter future where every voice mattered, every life was cherished, and the wild would always find a place within their hearts.